You could meet other atheists on campus. You could bring speakers to talk to you about things that you kind of believe in when you don't really see that anywhere else on campus. So that's really exciting. And long story short, through that campus group, I got connected with the Secular Student Alliance. This other girl that I started the group with, she said she volunteered at a summer camp for the children of atheist parents called Camp Quest, which boggled my mind because who knew there was a camp for that niche. But through her, she said, you know what, there's also a national organization, kind of like Campus Crusade for Christ or Campus for Christ. You know, like an umbrella organization for atheist groups. It's called the Secular Student Alliance. We should affiliate SWORD with that group. And I said, okay. So we did. And I ended up going to a Secular Student Alliance conference, and I got really into this. And it was very exciting to meet all these other student leaders who started groups at their own schools. So I got involved with the SSA. Through the SSA, I met a lot of other atheists, and I worked with the Secular Coalition for America. And one thing remained constant. You meet all these atheists, people who don't believe in God, and almost all of them came from a Christian background. Very few of them were second-generation atheists. Very few came from other religious backgrounds. Most of them were Christian. And most of them grew up in a church, Catholic church or Christian church. And if you ask them, what was church like? They would say it was a bad place, it was a horrible place, it was boring, I hated it, the priest was awful, it was fundamentalist, all these things you would expect. And my question was, I wonder if that's true. You know, am I getting a very biased perspective here? Are churches really as bad as they're making them out to be? And I'm not going to get a very fair answer, I figured, from the atheists that I know. So I figured, okay, I want to experience church. I want to know what church is like, just for the sake of knowing it, because everyone else knows what church is like. I have no idea. I've never been inside of a church. Not for a sermon, not for a service. So I figured, okay, you know what? I want to go to a church now. I want to go to a church, but what you can't do in church, you can't just go there and tap someone and say, you know, you really believe that? You can't do that. I wanted to go and ask questions. So I figured, okay, what can I do? Maybe I'll start a website, and I'll go to these churches, and then write about my experiences on the website, and then people can respond to questions I have. And that sounds all well and good, but you know, when I say I'm going to start a website, I don't know how to do that. And I don't know how to get people to come to that website. Like, how do people even know what I'm doing? So that plan kind of fell through. But I like that idea. I still wanted to go to church, and I still wanted to do something. And it turned out where I was living in Chicago at the time was next to this Catholic church, and it's called Old St. Pat's Church. And this is a very historic church in Chicago because about 150 years ago, there was a huge fire called the Great Chicago Fire. It burned down like so much of the city. This was one of the few buildings that did not burn down. So, you know, it's been here this whole time. It's very historic. And here's the church. I lived like right over here. So walking distance, I could see it out my window. So I figured, okay, you know what? I could go to that church, you know, certain afternoons or evenings or something, and I could go to their services. And again, I could kind of do this experiment that I want to do. But again, how do people find out about it? And then what came to mind is at the time there was a big hubbub about this auction going on eBay. Someone was selling the Virgin Mary on a grilled cheese sandwich. And that's kind of religious, right? And so I figured, okay, well that's just stupid. But if someone's getting attention for something kind of religious like that, I wonder if I could use eBay to kind of help me do something that's really religious. And you know, instead, not just the Virgin Mary on a church, there were people selling like toasts with Jesus on a piece of toast. Just to clarify, not a toast on a piece of Jesus, which I also saw. But what I ended up doing is I put up this auction on eBay. And really, it wasn't about the money. I basically said, I'll go to church. And here's an excerpt of what I posted. And you can read through this. But basically, I said, for every afternoon, you know, I'll go to church every day for at least an hour a day for every $10 you bid. So if you bid $10, I'll go to church for an hour or a day or whatever that comes out to be. And I'm not going to be an evil, mean atheist like screaming in the middle of the service. I'm going to go, I'll be respectful, I'll do whatever everyone else is doing, and I'll talk about it. I'll ask questions, I'm allowed to do that, I can talk to the pastor, like, I'll do all that. And for whoever wins this auction, I will give you like proof that I'm going. Maybe I'll start a website, again, I'll figure out how to do that, or I'll write up a diary, or I'll take pictures, like, I'll go, I'm not lying about that. But that's the deal. I actually said initially, not $10, I said I'll go for $1 each visit. Because again, it's not about the money. But then I figured, wait a minute, some brat who has a $5 a week allowance is going to plan out my next week. I don't want that to happen, so I'll say $10. At least then we'll weed out the crazy people and actually just get some people who are serious about this. So that's what I said. I also made an addition to this auction later on, because again, I didn't want people thinking I'm scamming them or I'm trying to get money out of this. I said whatever money I make is going to go to the Secular Student Alliance, because I work with them. I also put up here that I really am an atheist. I started an atheist group, I work with atheist organizations. I'm not lying about that. I'm not like a Christian who's doing some publicity thing saying, I'm going to go to church and then convert. Like, no, I'm really an atheist. So here's the problem with this. This is the same problem I had with that idea that why don't I start a website and do this? How do people find out about this eBay auction? You know, because no one knows that I'm doing this. So I ended up doing 3 things that kind of helped spread the publicity about this. Here's the first thing I did. I swear this picture has some sense. One of the nice things about eBay is if you put any auction on there, people always are allowed to send you questions. You know, if I'm selling an iPod, what do you think is a question everyone wants to know?
How big?
What is it?
How big?
How big is the iPod? Yeah, but why are you selling it? You know, what's wrong with it? Something like that. And the nice thing about eBay is when they send you those questions, instead of just replying to the person who sent you the question, I can make my response public. That way, anyone who checks out my eBay site, the eBay auction, can also see the question that someone asked and my response to it. That way they don't ask the same question over and over. So what happened is, I got this question, like within a day of posting this. I don't know how the guy found the auction, but he said, hey, if I win this auction, will you worship the Taco Bell god? And I'm like, well, so much for being taken seriously. So I responded, well, Taco Bell god makes as much sense to me as any other god. So not only will I go to Taco Bell, I will worship the Gordita god and baptize it with fire sauce. And I made it public, so everyone that came could see it. And the amazing thing is, I don't know again how these people found the site, but more people started coming to the page with this auction, and I started getting more questions that were a little more serious. And you realize that some of the people coming to the site have never talked to an atheist before. And they would ask questions like, how do you live your life if you don't believe in God? Where do you go when you die? How do you have any morals whatsoever? And the nice thing is, I wasn't a jerk about it, but I could kind of respond to those in a sentence or two, you know, like, well, I'm good because it's the right thing to do. These are not philosophical answers I'm giving. But, you know, how do I get by? Well, the same reason you get by without believing in Allah, you know, right? You just do. But I could give those answers, and some of them I'm proud of, some of them I guess I could have done a better job with, but they were genuine answers. And people kind of appreciated that I wasn't just ripping on them for being religious. And I also had some crazy questions. One lady said, you know, well, if there's no God, where do mountains come from? And I responded, I'm like, here's the link to Wikipedia, go read it. But the fun thing is, by the end of this auction, there were over 40 questions that I got, that all of which you could read on the site. And I think people appreciated that here was an atheist who was, if you ask a serious question, will give you a serious answer. And they don't get that a lot. So that was one thing I did. Another thing I did is, you know, I work with the Secular Student Alliance. It's a national organization. And one of the benefits of that is we know how to send out press releases to various media sources. So I asked some people at the SSA, can we send out a press release that I'm doing this? So we went to all the Chicago papers, Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, those are like the Star and this one here, big papers, and we said, you know, Hemant Mehta, a 22-year-old from Chicago, is doing this auction. And we sent it to him, and I got no response whatsoever. I also sent it to a very local paper called the Daily Southtown, where I'm from. And we said the same press release, but I added one sentence in there. And it said, Hemant Mehta, a 22-year-old from Chicago, and a graduate of Carl Sandburg High School, which is in the paper's community, is doing this auction on eBay. As soon as they saw that local angle, they called me up the next day, and they said, this is interesting, talk to us about this auction. And a couple days later, this